A judge has ruled that the UK government was acting within its rights when it blocked gender reforms passed by the Scottish Parliament. MSPs agreed legislation last year to make it easier for trans people to change their legally recognised sex. But in an unprecedented move, the UK government stepped in to veto the bill, leading to a showdown in court. Our political correspondent Phil Sim has more.
The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill is passed.
A year ago this month, MSPs passing a bill at the heart of this row. It was a bid to streamline the gender recognition system to one known as self-identification. It was a contentious debate, and it sparked a controversial response when Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack blocked the bill from becoming law. The row ended up in the courts when the Scottish Government launched a legal challenge. Their lawyers said the UK government did not have reasonable grounds to veto this legislation, but the other side insisted that the bill did cut across Westminster equalities law. Today, the judge concluded that Alistair Jack had followed the correct legal procedure.
Trans people are under attack! What do we do?
The reforms were designed to make life easier for trans people, speeding the system up and removing the need to get a medical diagnosis before registering an official change. Equality groups are disappointed.
The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill would have made it much simpler and fairer for trans people to be able to update the sex recorded on their birth certificate, and because of the court decision today, they'll continue to have to use a really difficult, intrusive and expensive process to do that.
Some women's groups campaigned against the reform, saying that self-ID put their rights at risk. They've welcomed the ruling.
This is a really great day for women's rights in Scotland. We were very, very concerned that the bill as enacted by the Scottish Parliament was going to cut a massive hole in safeguarding and the protection of women.
Those opposing responses are mirrored by the politicians.
I'm obviously very pleased that the decision I took has been vindicated. I'm very pleased that the Section 35 order that had never been used before is clearly cemented into the Scotland Act of 1998. And I'm pleased also that the judge agreed with me that there were adverse effects on GB-wide legislation relating to equalities.
Scottish ministers, meanwhile, are furious.
Regardless of your views on gender recognition, and I appreciate people will have different views on that, to me, this is a dark day for Scottish democracy and a dark day for the powers of the Scottish Parliament, and that should be a concern for everyone, regardless of their views on gender recognition.
The Scottish Government has 21 days to decide whether to appeal. Ultimately, this is a case that could go all the way to the Supreme Court.
And Phil joins me now from Holyrood. Phil, how is this judgment being seen in relation to devolution itself, the devolution settlement?
Well, there is, of course, a direct impact on the rights of trans people and of women from this legislation. That's been a very well-rehearsed debate, and it's a debate that the government hoped might move forward after they'd passed these reforms. Instead, it's as stuck as ever, and they are stuck in the middle of it. But yes, there is that question about devolved powers, because this was the first ever use of Section 35 of the Scotland Act to block a piece of Holyrood legislation. The government really wanted to test the limits of that in case it's ever to be used again. Ultimately, the judge has ruled that this power is part of the Scotland Act, it's part of the devolution settlement. Scottish ministers aren't particularly happy about that, but ultimately they may look to turn that to their favour in terms of the argument for their preferred constitutional settlement, which is independence.
How likely is it now, do you think, that the Scottish Government will appeal?
Well, they're certainly looking at it. They'll be going through the judgment in detail, looking for grounds for appeal. The question is perhaps whether or not they will want to. This has been a long and bruising process. Is this a hill that they want to keep fighting on? Alistair Jack is certainly urging them not to. He says they shouldn't be spending public money on pulling this further through the courts, but they will perhaps be paying more heed to the views of their partners in government, the Scottish Greens. They are furious about this ruling. Today they called it horrible, heartbreaking and unjust. It's been a red line for them in the past about whether they would continue to serve in government, that this case would continue to be fought. So, fittingly, for a very political court case, there are political questions as well as legal ones as to whether it will continue.
Phil Sim, thank you very much.